Hi, Mark here from the Anglo-Indian Kitchen. Hope you're all well today. So far I've cooked for you lots of different curries and fries. So I'm going to cook you something a little bit different today. Now, something I get quite disappointed with whenever I go to an Indian restaurant is the quality of the rice. Whenever you order a palau, for me it tends to taste quite tasteless, to be honest. So I'm going to cook for you today something called tomato rice, which has got lots of spices in, garlic and ginger, and it's full of flavour, and it's something you can probably eat on its own. It's that tasty. So enjoy the video, and please give me your feedback. Tomato rice. So the ingredients for the tomato rice is 1 onion finely diced, 1 teaspoon of fresh garlic finely minced, 1 teaspoon of fresh ginger finely minced, and then we have 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, 1/4 teaspoon of clove powder, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom powder. We then need to make sure that we measure our rice. So I've got 1 level cup of basmati rice. It's important it's a level cup because that's how we will make sure we have the right liquid to the rice that we're cooking. For every cup of rice, by the way, 1 cup of rice would probably be enough to feed 2 adults comfortably. And for every cup of rice, you need 1 chicken stock cube. So if it's 2 cups of rice, it's 2 chicken stock cubes. 1/2 cup of frozen peas, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 1 large tin of chopped tomatoes.
So the first thing you need to do is wash your rice and soak it in water for 30 minutes and liquidize your tin tomatoes.
So we've got 2 pans on the hob, and what we first of all want to do is, to a slightly smaller pan, add in our tomato juice, and actually add a little bit of water to that because that's a little bit thick. And what we want to do is just put that on a medium to low heat, and also add in our 1 OXO cube. We also, at this stage, want to add in our sugar. And give that a little bit of a stir. And we just put it on a gentle heat, and we want that to heat slowly. In fact, we probably want to add a bit more water because we need enough liquid to cook the rice. So while that's cooking, in the other pan, we'll add some oil, or again, as I always say, if you want to eat more healthy, use some Frylight or any other cooking spray. Just about a teaspoon or so of oil to coat the bottom of the pan. And then when that's heated, we'll add our onions. So our oil now is at a good temperature. So what we then do is, as we normally do, start off with our base with our onions. So we'll fry those until they get nice and brown and softened. Give that a bit of a stir. So they shouldn't take very long, just turn down the heat a tad. So our onions are starting to soften, so then we add in our garlic and ginger, as per always. Mix that in to our onion mixture, and again let that cook for a few more minutes. So our garlic and ginger is cooked nicely now, so we finally add in our spices. So we've got turmeric, clove powder, cinnamon powder, and cardamom powder. That all goes in. Give that a really good stir, and again, as I've always said, don't want your spices to burn. Keep it on a low heat, and if necessary, add a little bit of water. But in this case, you don't want to add any water if possible, or very little, because it will muck up our cooking process for the rice, because the liquid for the rice is really important. That's measured correctly. I don't want this to catch, so just a tiny drop. The time we add our rice, it will be evaporated. So our spices have been cooking through now. So what we now do is we add in our washed rice and also our peas. And what we do is we give that a really good stir through. So what we want to do is fry the rice and mix in all the spices with the onions. Just let that fry for a few minutes, but you must remember to keep turning it, because if you don't, it will catch the bottom. Which we don't want it to do. So let's talk about how much liquid needs to go in the tomato juice that needs to go into the rice. I find if you double the quantity of liquid, it does tend to be a bit stodgy. So for every cup of rice, I tend to put in a cup and 3/4 of tomato juice. So if you're going to do that for 2 cups of rice, that'll be 3.5 cups of tomato juice. So we've just got the 1 cup of rice there. So what I'm going to do is use the same cup, which is obviously critical, to measure the juice. If you run out of juice, no problem. What you do is you add in just some water. So that's about 3/4 there, you can see. And we're done. Keep that to one side. If you've got any juice left over, don't throw it away, because if you need to add a bit more, you can do once you've checked the rice. If it's looking a bit undercooked, you have that tomato juice to play with. Problem is, if you've overcooked it, you've overcooked it. There's nothing you can do. So take that one off the heat. We'll add a little bit of salt. We don't want too much salt because the stock has got some salt in it, so just enough to give it the right amount of seasoning. So we bring that to the boil. And that's bubbling nicely now. So then what we want to do is, you can either use the same pan as long as it's oven proof, because I cook this in the oven. The reason why I cook this in the oven is I find it's less likely to catch at the bottom, whereas if you cook it on the hob, I found unless you're washing it like a hawk, the bottom can catch quite easily. So I prefer the oven, but you know, each to their own, and you can cook it on the hob if you like. But you must cover it. So I'm going to transfer this dish, because this particular saucepan is not oven proof. So I'm going to transfer this into a casserole dish. And make sure I get everything out. So you can see that. So let me see that, because you can't see it. So that's it there. And what I'm going to do is just make sure that's flat. Put the lid on and transfer that to my oven, which is already preheated. About 180 degrees, and it should take about 20 minutes to half an hour to cook. And what you need to do is you need to make sure you stir it at least once and put the lid back on again. It should be ready in about 20-25 minutes. So our rice has been cooking for about 30 minutes actually. It depends on how efficient your oven is, but I've checked on it and it's looking absolutely perfect. So I've given it a stir while it was cooking, and you can see the heat coming off that, and the rice is lovely and fluffy and cooked just right. You wouldn't want to serve that at this temperature because it's piping hot, but that's cooked just about perfect.
So there you have it, tomato rice.